call to order the Planning Commission public hearing and regular session at Cape Charles Civic Center, 500 Tazewell, November 5th, 2019. Roll call.
Holloway here.
Deanico here.
Strube here. McCoy here.
Rosen present.
Let it be known that we have a quorum and that Commissioner Salopek is not here. First order of business, public hearing. Cape Charles Town Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, November 5th, 2019 at 6 p.m. in the Cape Charles Civic Center, 500 Tazewell Avenue, to receive comment on the following: an application for a conditional use permit to allow an accessory dwelling unit at 501 Tazewell Avenue, tax map number 83 Alpha 3-1-377. An application for conditional use permit to allow a residential dwelling unit above a commercial use in the C1 zoning district at 316 Bravo Mason Avenue, tax map number 83 Alpha 3-1-611A. Planning Commission will hold a meeting immediately following the public hearing to consider the requests. So the first, do we have any?
We do.
We do?
Andrew Fulmer, 300 Mason Avenue.
All right,
Will you be able to see and hear me if I don't stand up?
that's fine.
No, just real quick. I'm Andrew Fulmer. I live at 300 Mason Avenue, Unit 2E. I also rent the first floor of this building in question. That's not particularly relevant to my comments, but full disclosure. But I think over the last couple of years, I've been in various meetings related to Main Street and whatever with various ones of you. And this is exactly the kind of development we've been talking about. We want to maximize on Mason Avenue, having the apartments above the stores, going back to re-engaging the historical character, having mixed use. So I think it's a kind of a no-brainer. But I just wanted to say that I'm on the County Planning Commission, and we frequently cite accessory dwelling units. There's various things Cape Charles has been leading the way on, dealing with affordable housing that I refer to there. So good job, please keep up with that. But I think this is wonderful, and also as a resident who lives directly across the street, I love the idea of the second floor being full of apartments and bringing us a more vibrant Mason Avenue, not 24 hours a day, into the evening and all of that. I think it's a wonderful experience. I love living on Mason. I think others would too. I think this meets all the requirements and is completely consistent with the comprehensive plan, as I understand it. So I would encourage you all to support it as well.
Thank you. Anything else? Anybody else?
Nobody else?
All right, so
I make a motion that we close the public meeting.
Second.
so we have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. All right. So now we will all rise and have a moment of silence, followed by the pledge of allegiance. Join me in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Seated. Do we have any public comments? Consent agenda. Do I have approval of the agenda format?
We might want to just add in
Okay, under
new business.
under new business B,
Yes.
election.
Chair and vice chair.
Yeah.
Make a motion we approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of the minutes. problem with the minutes, the two sets of minutes?
Make a motion that we accept the meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Reports. Zach, do you have anything to add to your,
I do not. So, well, I guess one thing is, just to put it on the record, I believe Tracy said that we have 116 SurveyMonkey responses, and then I have I would say about 30 hard copy responses of the survey.
okay, so our goal, we wanted to get at least 200, so for the public here, if you haven't done the town survey, it's on the town website, and please pass the word along. It's on, you can do a SurveyMonkey. There's also hard copies that can be obtained at the town offices, at the Cape Charles Main Street, and where was the other place that we had it?
The library.
The library.
For those of you who don't know where Cape Charles Main Street is, it's on Main Street.
Yeah, it's
Randolph Avenue.
718 Randolph.
It's right there across from the Eastern Shore Custom Cards.
SurveyMonkey is probably the best way to go, because if you have access to the internet, because we don't have to input it there, we can manipulate and sort the data. All right, thank you. All right, okay, so unfinished business, comprehensive plan update. So the report that I read is good. I didn't see anything wrong with it. You have a question in there. Review the staff report, determine if there's any action necessary. I personally don't see any action necessary. We're meeting 2 weeks from tonight, 2 weeks from this afternoon at 3 o'clock. So I think all the commissioners know what they're supposed to be doing and should be doing that. If you have any, I did send out the color-coded matrix, and I hope that helped some.
Yep.
Like I was telling Diane here, some of those comp plans would be just to look at them, to see what they write up on some of the areas that you have, just to see. You don't have to use it, but just to see what they say, and see if that kind of jives with what we have. I would encourage you to do what I did, and I went to our comp plan, and I just went and said, I did a search and just said, find everything that had transportation in it, and then made a note of where that was, so I can insert that into the various areas that I'm going to try to use for my outline. But you can do it however you want. Please keep in mind about graphs, charts, because a lot of these other comp plans have a lot of that stuff. Right?
It makes it much more palatable to the community as a whole. Yeah.
Now, so do any of the commissioners have any discussions or comments that they would like to say on the comp plan?
I started a discussion with Cape Charles Main Street and looked at their website and submitted questions to both Tammy and Jackie. They gave me some additional feedback. I asked them to give me the rest of their feedback if they could by November 11th, so I have enough time to present and send to Tracy before I'm out of pocket, because I won't be here for that meeting.
And again, I would encourage those people that have something, the demographics and the market study that were done for the town are pretty good. It's a pretty good indicator. Plus they have the sources where you can go to get that kind of stuff too. So, all right. Okay, if there's no further questions.
Just, I noticed that meeting did have minutes
Yes,
that presented. Do we have to approve those as well?
those were the minutes that we.
That we just approved, included those.
Right.
Good.
Just remember to make sure you read those minutes because it said in there what each
Right.
section or chapter is supposed to have, all right? So we're going to do the goal, objective, and policies per chapter if it's applicable, okay? And then there will be an intro as well. All right. Any other comments, discussions on comprehensive plan? Great, thank you. And hopefully we'll get our 200 by the 1st of December on the survey.
Do you know when we might get any kind of a summary of that survey?
Well, I think it doesn't take long to sort that and get that stuff out. So I would think that we should be able to have something by our meeting in December. I don't know when our meeting would be in December, but I don't know. I don't know when is the first Tuesday, but the third.
Third, yep.
Okay, so I don't know if you would have time to do that, but you might be able to have a pretty good indicator, so, okay. All right, great. Anything else? All right. Okay, the next item is the conditional use permit to allow residential dwelling unit above a commercial use in the C1 zoning district at 316B Mason Avenue, tax map number 83 alpha 3-1-611 alpha. Everybody should have had a chance to review this. We did this last month. Staff recommends approval because it meets all the conditions of the comp plan and zoning ordinances.
And it also shows the easement behind
Right.
the access, which we had asked about, which is positive.
I just have one clarification. When it says office studio space, that's not a studio where you would be showing your artwork for someone to buy. So it's just a working location.
It's a working location.
Excellent.
Parking's not a problem.
Did I understand there's two entrances, both the rear and the front?
No, there's only one entrance.
Okay.
And the easement. So there is a window, right?
Yeah, so if they convert, whatever room is going to be the bedroom, they're gonna have to make sure that that window provides adequate
Access.
yeah, for the building code.
Okay.
So that'll be, yeah, but at least if it has a window that's large enough, then it's fine to just have one entrance, like actual door.
And like it was discussed here, this is, this is great as far as Mason Avenue. That's what we're looking to see. We've got the Parsons building being renovated as we speak, so this is great. It's a great start. So, hey, and it's one bedrooms right now are like in demand. I can tell you. All right.
I'd like to make a motion then that we accept the conditional use permit to allow residential dwelling above this commercial use in the C1 zoning district for 316 Bravo, Mason Ave.
Second? Oh, go ahead.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so the next step here is that this will go to town council, right? Have a public hearing. Okay, item C is conditional use permit to allow an accessory dwelling unit at 501 Haswell Avenue, tax map number 83-1-377. It's right across the street. We talked about this last week, or last month. And it's the shed that's going to be converted into a one-bedroom with bath and a living/kitchenette. The exterior of the building is going to remain the same as adequate parking. So, any questions?
I do. The only question I have really is, if the bottom floor is the accessory dwelling unit and the upstairs is storage, but the only access to the storage is through the accessory dwelling unit, does that make sense? In terms of being an accessory dwelling unit?
Yeah.
Shouldn't there be some other way of getting to that storage?
I provided the accessory dwelling unit regulations
Yeah.
here. And I think number 4 is kind of what you're referring to. Accessory buildings containing an accessory dwelling shall maintain the exterior appearance of an accessory building, shall not have the appearance of a single family dwelling. We've discussed this previously.
Oh, that wasn't what I was discussing at all.
No, I'm expounding upon that. So
Okay.
we've discussed this previously about the intent when accessory dwelling units were coming forward last year. The intent for the accessory dwelling unit to be an accessory to an accessory structure, essentially, so a garage or something like that. However, when it was translated into ordinance, this is what we've received, and I don't see anything there that specifically states that. So legally, I can't enforce something like that.
Yeah, that was my impression too, that there's nothing we can do about this particular one, but we might want to consider that in the future, because if the accessory dwelling unit was on the top floor and the storage was on the bottom, you couldn't let someone go through the storage.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So it should be true vice versa, so we might want to consider that as.
But it doesn't necessarily even need storage, the way it's.
The way that it's written in the ordinance, it doesn't require the accessory dwelling unit to be accessory to something like storage or a garage.
I thought the accessory dwelling unit had to be accessory to an accessory.
That's what
Accessory building,
Yeah, that was what the intent was when it was going through, but the way that it translated into ordinance does not reflect that. The
So,
way that it translated into ordinance is that it shouldn't look like a single-family home. So basically like a tiny house on your property, which this isn't existing, so
Right.
it's almost grandfathered in that
Yeah.
sense. But for a future one, I mean, nothing that I can enforce would make you have to put in a garage with an accessory building over it or something like that, the way that the ordinance is written.
Matt,
Sure.
the accessory to the storage is with the pull downstairs.
no, I get.
No, but see,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think what you were trying to get at is, would there be an access to that storage separate from inside the accessory dwelling unit? I think that's what she was getting at. That was her
Thank you.
Yeah, he just answered it.
Yeah.
Does it drop down?
No, but it's inside the accessory dwelling unit.
It's not gonna be outside, is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, I knew that. I knew that. I saw it was a pull down.
Well, and in this case, I don't think there's a thing we can do about it, because
No,
it's
there
not
isn't.
required, but I'm asking really, and I guess I'm not making myself clear, I'm just asking, in the future, do we want to make some changes so that that is the
Well,
way it is?
But you see, an accessory dwelling unit
Mhm.
is accessory to the accessory unit.
Not
No.
necessarily. An accessory dwelling unit is accessory to the primary structure,
Right,
being the
okay.
home.
Right,
In this
okay,
case.
but it has to be part of an accessory unit, right?
No. So that's where the intent was, but it didn't translate into actual.
accessory dwelling unit is part of an accessory unit.
No,
Right.
it's part of
Not
the
at this
main,
point.
it's part of the main unit.
It's, well, it's part of, it's a part of a, like a garage, a shed.
So this is what the,
That's what I thought it was.
so it says accessory dwelling, the definition is a dwelling unit which is an accessory use to a single-family dwelling. Or commercial use in the commercial or commercial
Okay.
residential
All right.
one district.
Where did I see this?
Well, I think it was presented to many of us that way. As an
And
accessory to
that
an
could very well-
accessory
and that's
dwelling.
what's
Okay, all
causing
right,
confusion.
okay.
Yeah.
But still,
And in fact, it was,
the,
I know another place that they were required to put in, an accessory to, in the accessory building. So,
So I think,
I'd like to know what example you have there, because we've been approving,
it's directly across the street from me on,
Yeah.
Nectarine, the house behind the big house.
so the outcome that I'm getting from this conversation is, or just what I would suggest is that if you guys, as planning commission, want it to be an accessory dwelling unit to be an accessory to an accessory, it's hard to explain, but like a garage or a studio or something like that, then, you know, I can look into that and I can write something up, but it would have to go through that process of being in the ordinance.
well,
'cause currently
so,
it's
so
not.
let me just throw this out. So you say a person wants to put in an accessory dwelling unit, and they don't have anything there.
Right, they can do it.
They can build
So they're
a
gonna
house
build, they're
there.
gonna build a house, as long as it doesn't look like a house.
Right,
From the ground up.
right.
well, okay, so the example on Randolph, the 400 block Randolph, if you
Yeah.
remember the tax credit one, they're building what they call a cottage right now, because it was being processed prior to the accessory dwelling unit language. But that's a brand new structure right out of the ground.
Oh, in the back of that
And it
house?
only has, it just has the one use,
That's
it's not a partial use
That's
to the
correct.
house.
And it doesn't look like a cottage, right?
Oh,
It doesn't necessarily look like a single family home, but it could,
It's
it's
pretty
opinion, I mean, and that's the thing too, is if you guys wanted to do.
We're covered, we're just dealing with.
I'm sure it'll be confused.
no, you're
That's
totally,
okay.
you're good.
You're covered, you're covered.
Yeah, you're fine.
The exterior appearance of a home, of like a small home, that makes sense.
We can only enforce what's in place at this point in time, so you're covered.
But
Paul, since
It's
you're
all about what
our
we're doing in the
town
future, that's all.
council representative, what do you think the council approved? What do you think they approved?
We proved this. We had discussions on the dual use, let's say, garage underneath and accessory. But this is a language that we ultimately,
All right, okay.
Okay, so you did not misunderstand what you were.
no.
Okay,
And I have to be, you know, to proceed with what you're recommending, I'd say, then what's the benefit of forcing that before we go and actually propose?
But,
Well, there is
but you see, but you see also, to counter what you said,
Yeah.
is that that accessory dwelling unit is owned by the person that owns that property.
yeah.
And so they have control over it, even if they rent it out. I mean, if they have storage in there, then, you know, they have to have some sort, and they rent it out to somebody. They would have to make some arrangement with that person's,
Yeah.
with, you know.
that's not the intent, the storage is for the
That's
renter.
fine. We're,
Oh, it's for the renter?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
oh, now you made me forget. How can you do
But I know in the comprehensive plan, we're gonna be talking about affordability and, you know, the way it now stands, it does present an opportunity to be able to say something about an increase in the focus on affordability that things don't get totally out of hand, so that, you know, it may not be all that bad that it is the way it is.
Yeah, personally, I think it should be the way that it was intended, but it didn't translate.
I'm sorry.
And it's still 40% or less of the square feet of the main building.
So it has to meet the accessory structure requirements, which,
And that's what that is?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I don't know specifically, I mean, I can look that up, but I would look at.
That's what it says.
It does.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion? Sorry,
No.
brought up that thing.
It's already been seconded.
To permit the conversion of an existing 1.5-story detached accessory structure to an accessory dwelling unit on the first floor and storage on the upper unit for 501 Tazewell.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Go.
You're all set, guy.
Okay. So the next step on that's the same as the previous one. We'll go to
Council.
public hearing with town council, and they will do the same as what we just did.
Right.
All right. Next item is proposed text amendments to zoning ordinance, Article 2, Section 2.9, adding 2 definitions. So the 2 definitions are hardship and variance. We talked about this before, and the town planner gave us the definition, the old definition of a variance, or the existing definition of a variance, Code of Virginia definition of variance, and the proposed definition, and then their analysis.
I guess I have a question, is I'm not sure why the need to condense down even the existing one, because it's pretty close to the Code of Virginia. No, maybe simplification, but
There's not necessarily a need.
I personally like it though when the definitions are as succinct as possible and still cover what you need them to cover. I think the more you have in there, the more convoluted it gets and the harder to read it.
Yeah, to me, as I wrote in my analysis, it's essentially these two, the Code of Virginia and the existing, are explaining what the ordinance already explains as to the process and what can be allowed for a variance. And then, you know, dumbing it down essentially is what the variance requests specifically. Like, what is a variance? Then you look at, okay, well, variance in correlation with a hardship equals, and this is what the ordinance expounds upon. But I won't down the hill for this, so it's y'all's decision. I think hardship needs to go forward because we don't have a definition for hardship.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm just going to say I haven't been on the Board of Zoning Appeals for quite some time. I'm not on it now, but was on it. It does make a big difference when you have definitions and when they're very succinct.
And the Board of Zoning Appeals recommended, they agreed that both were definitions were appropriate and accurate, so.
And I assume the word strict implies that there are degrees of enforcement there.
Strict in the variance definition means that it really has to meet those 3 criteria that it constitutes a hardship. So we had a meeting, so Jim is on the Board of Zoning Appeals, and we had a meeting just this past week, the 30th. And they all, even me included, we were all like, man, we would love to approve this, but strict application of the 3 criteria doesn't allow us to do that. And so it was denied for a height variance.
It meant to, did not meet that.
Exactly. So it is a strict, and that goes forward in county, it goes, you know, that's a state thing of a strict enforcement of those 3.
Any further discussion? All right. Do I hear a motion to, we can do it both? We can, somebody can, I mean, this is twice, this is the second month we've had this,
Let's get it off the list. Okay.
take it off.
But you know, let's work the process and get on to this other stuff there that's demanding our attention.
All right, I'll make a motion
Go ahead.
I move that we approve the 2 new definitions to Article 2, Section 2.9 regarding hardship and variance.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second discussion.
Yeah, I'm still not there on the variance part. I understand the hardship part, but I'm not there on the variance part. The variance, to me, the old definition specifically pointed to height, area, size of structure, size of yards, what have you, with regard to zoning variance.
So, yeah, in answer to that, so then hardship would then, you'd say, okay, so strict enforcement of the ordinance would cause undue hardship. And then you look at hardship, a restriction on property so unreasonable that it results in arbitrary or capricious interference with the basic property rights and that which relates to the physical characteristics, physical being height, bulk, etc. Not, and then it goes further to say that, at least that definition, not personal, financial, or self-imposed circumstances.
Right, it's basically to protect the enforcer from being held in court for taking. That's the reason for it. We're not allowed to do that. Plain and simple.
Yeah. And typically with variances, and this is just, it's still on topic, is if you see multiple variances for the same thing, then that means that your ordinance needs to be updated. And so we get few and far between variances, at least at this point. I haven't seen many, so.
Does that speak to your question?
I can live with it. This is not going to.
Okay.
Sleep over this one.
Okay.
Well, the person that is the enforcer of this is sitting right there.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. He's got one, he is the one that has to live with whatever.
Well,
He's proposing it.
and the person who comes after him.
Exactly, right.
And town council for ultimately approving this.
Yep.
and he'll have to explain to town council too.
Mm-hmm. Right. That should be easy.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry. You've been there, done that. You're
No.
closer than I am.
Further discussion? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Good. Proposed text amendment to zoning ordinance Article 4, Section 4.5 and 4.6 review.
So we're real close to the end of this. Yay. So, yeah, shared parking.
Then we're gonna get one that we see only what's in it, right? Not what used to be in it?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Yeah, I'll provide that to you.
Okay.
So the green is what we've completed in this last section. And then, so shared parking, and then those that we're gonna go through today. So shared parking, in my staff report, I was kind of unclear, but I spoke to Paul. We were conversing about shared parking, and he had mentioned in the last meeting that he thought the intent was, and I agree with him, that you would have the opportunity to provide like if you were wanting shared parking with your new development, you have the opportunity to do 2 options. One would be provide that, pretty intense traffic study, et cetera, using the criteria that we talked about last time. And that's in your packet. And then, or to, for properties sharing spaces under this provision, cross easement shall be filed establishing access to the shared parking spaces in perpetuity. And documentation of filing provided to the town. So it's one of those like, hey, here's the study, or hey, I've talked to this person and they're willing to do this in perpetuity documentation.
So essentially though, I feel like this is gonna be for new construction as opposed to current.
Yeah,
Because there's really no.
yeah, it's a new construction thing.
Okay. Have you had experience with this?
Not directly, no.
I just hate that in perpetuity part,
Well, you think the businesses wouldn't hate that too?
Yeah.
See, so that's why we talked about having that other option.
Right.
Well, here's the data behind
Right.
to the town.
So once they agree to this, there's no way out of it. 100 years from now,
But-
ostensibly, there's no way out of it.
For when they take that choice, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But it allows for,
It's two parties.
sorry?
I said it's two parties.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely, right,
They're
right.
agreeing.
Yep. We're just giving them boundaries that they have to stay within, that's all.
What is our goal in this?
Well, pardon.
Yeah, well, so it would be like, for instance, in the summer, you know, you don't want to have a huge parking lot knowing that in the winter it's not really going to be used except for festive Fridays, et cetera. Or a specific use that might be like a kayak place that's going to be closed during the winter, and so, you know, providing that kind of, or a bar and an ice cream shop, or a bar and a, I don't know, a bar that's open at night and something like a library that's open during the day. You know, there's parking that's not used. So to capitalize on your parking that you have without taking up land for parking spaces.
Yeah.
Landscaping and parking lots. So this specifically is for 20 or more parking spaces. So currently, I mean, Patrick Hand's building, his new development, that has 20 or more parking spaces. Anything that's going to be in the harbor will most likely have close to it, if not more than 20 parking spaces. So this is where that would fall into place.
Looking at Patrick Hand's property, that has more than 20 spaces, how close is he to this?
What do you mean?
I mean, how, if we were to look at his property, what is this now?
So this is his property.
Yeah,
You talking about how close is he to what is
to meeting
being
his
considered?
requirements.
Not very close at all. So if you can see here, it's, you know, it's more than 10 in a row without any type of, you know, breaking up of the parking. So that's one of the things that I'm proposing. The thing right here, that would be actually curb and landscaped. It wouldn't just be this little wooden thing that, I think, yeah, it wouldn't be that. It would actually have a function and a purpose by providing, retention for stormwater, grass, a tree, things
Be
like that.
more expensive.
It would be more expensive, but developers that are gonna buy these properties
Exactly.
are. And so this is here's some examples of, so like right here, you'd see your head-to-head parking. There would be a strip in between that would be required, and then around your curves. So if you actually go to Bay Creek Coach House Tavern, their parking lot follows, somewhat follows this.
Yeah,
You can tell that
yes, yes, that's right.
it's more inviting, it's more pedestrian friendly as
Yes, it
opposed to just the car.
Yep. Well, considering where it is, that makes all the sense in the world.
Exactly,
Because it's a
and
very
golf carts.
golf cart
everywhere.
intensive area, yep. Mhm.
And I think the goal is to kind of expand the, I mean, of course it's in our comprehensive, the walkability of what we currently have in the historic district, expand it into the harbor and south of, you know, just keep expanding it.
The downside is if you take away parking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but just be aware of that.
Yeah, so
Generate oxygen.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Generate oxygen.
Well, I'm not, you know, there are pros and cons to every choice we make.
Take away carbon dioxide, generate oxygen.
Yep.
That's right.
and heat that it produces.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So there's that, let's see, and then just the plantings of the trees and things like that, and there's me and Diane met on this, and she wanted to specify, you know, trees that are good for Cape Charles, and so we have that master tree plan that's specified in here to use approved vegetation from that. Wheel bumpers, and vehicles shall be separated from sidewalks, driveways, and streets, so anywhere that there's gonna be possibly pedestrians, by wheel bumpers and a strip of land at least 10 feet wide. So again, it's taking away parking, like you had mentioned, but it's providing safety and more
Yep.
pedestrian friendly
Right.
than having cars right next to where people are walking and biking. Head-to-head parking, as I've showed, and well, I'll show it again. Head-to-head parking will have that strip in between And so just another thing, so Food Line parking lot, look at that one compared to the Bay Creek one.
Right, I
You know,
mean,
you don't, yeah.
two different worlds.
Exactly. But another thing with that is every time, like, sometimes at lunch, you know, I'll go to McDonald's and I'll just want to eat in my car, right? And I want to sit under a tree, you know? I'd love to sit under a tree while I'm sitting there eating in my car, but everyone is parked under the trees, you know? So you can't get there. But this is going to be, there's trees everywhere, you can park under it. So there's another. Okay, perimeter landscape strips, so that's gonna be a 5-foot wide landscape strip where a parking lot abuts a rear or side property line. So you're not having, so for instance, the town parking lot near the harbor and the shanty parking lot, if they were to abut, there would be a landscape strip there, so it's not just asphalt to asphalt or something like that. So you can see that on the left side here, where it's.
Do you actually have red dots on the screen?
No, this is.
Oh, thank God, because I'm not seeing one.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just on that left side, there's a strip there, so if anyone develops next to it, it's not just gonna be their parking right next to your parking, it's, and then, you know, it provides that, it provides runoff for stormwater, so you can slant it down. So that's where that is. Trees of a species appropriate, spaced every 40 linear feet, so not a crazy amount of trees, you know. Provide drainage and irrigation for stormwater, so we're something like this size that's going to provide 20 parking spaces or more will probably have to be DEQ approved anyway, so they would be looking at that.
Okay.
We would review small things, but and then there's the master tree plan for trees that show.
Excuse me, go back to the DEQ comment. Why do they have jurisdiction?
Because so there's criteria that, well, Public Works Director Dave Faber reviews some plans.
Okay.
And anything that he doesn't feel comfortable reviewing, you have to be certified in that. He can send it to DEQ.
Okay. Okay, so there it is back up.
Exactly.
Got it.
And I
Okay.
think typically he does send it.
Which is fine,
Yeah.
it's my just context.
I went through some classes with that, and it's straight up engineering.
Yeah, okay,
It's not
that's
my
fair.
own
Yeah.
expertise. It's
I just want to make sure it wasn't
yeah.
my backyard issue.
No. So this is just this was already in our actual ordinance, but I carried it over, so the zoning administrator can look at if the site plan allows maybe to move or to adjust these requirements to save like a larger tree or something, maybe like in the library parking lot, a tree like that. But you can't, you know, that's our land, so we can figure out what to do with that. But if it was someone else's and they say, hey, I want to put a parking lot here, we can adjust accordingly without having to get a variance and going through that process and making it longer. Driveways, this is same for, this is access management, so that was all landscaping parking lots. Any questions on that or keep moving?
Just one thing, so the gravel parking lot, if they got to go ahead to that we have that in this town, that's got more than 80 spots, so you would, if this is enforced by them.
So that would be publicly owned, so that would be the town owning that parking lot. I mean, we're leasing it now, but say they sell it to us or something.
Right.
So it really doesn't have to be abided by, zoning ordinance doesn't have to be abided by the town.
Something like Congress, huh?
I won't go over too well.
I mean, you can seal it, it's just the way that local works, I mean, it's how it works, because you can change that, so if you didn't like it, you could go through that process, but, I don't know, it's typical, but I would say we would want, this is ideal.
We want
and so we would want to
provide set the example.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
So,
All right.
Yeah, we want, yeah.
When I'm not in the military, they do anything with it.
So this is access management, so like, you know, the actual place that you drive and before you park, you know, the driveway. This is taken from what we currently have. I don't think I changed anything. I would have mentioned it in this. From what's currently there in our ordinance.
So that's when you say interior driveways, that's a coming in and going out the same driveway.
Coming in and going out, and then also as you're driving through the parking lot. So those interior.
So you have two-way traffic, is what we're saying.
Yeah. So 22 feet in width, and then if it's a 40 or 60-degree angle like we have on Mason Avenue, then it would be different. And then parallel parking would be different as well. So.
Okay.
So there's that. Those are taken from, I think it's taken from ours, but also taken from other ordinances, but it's pretty standard practice as to the widths for interior driveways. Driveways and drive aisles are not permitted between the sidewalk and the building, so I think this is huge. So this is essentially what we have on Mason Avenue. You don't see any driveways in between the building and the street, right? Because if people are walking from Mason Avenue into a building, they don't, you know, there's not that, okay, well, you gotta wait for cars to pass. It's not giving priority to the cars, it's giving priority to the pedestrian. And that's, I mean, that's a huge thing that is being pushed just in planning overall, but also like, that's why people like Alexandria rather than Virginia Beach, you know, in those kind of instances.
All right, but we do have a case here where we just approved parking at the rear of 316 Bravo Mason that accesses along the parking lot at the corner, right, to access the corner. So is this a drive that comes across the pedestrian?
No, so that would be, so in this situation that we just approved, you have Bailey's Tackle Shop.
Right.
There's access there. That is not in between the building and the street. It's in between the building. It's on the side of the building and the street. So it's on the side of it.
Right, until another building is built.
Yeah, right.
But then it's also still on the side of that. It's in between. So these two buildings are sitting here and you have access directly in between them. This is more of like, you know, you have your building here and then a driveway here and then maybe like a little landscape strip and then your main road right here. So like this is Mason Avenue, then you'd have maybe like a little thing. So, okay, here. This is, so this. So if this was a driveway right here and not parking, that's what we don't want,
Right,
you know?
because you got competing.
But what we have on this is actually the area. So you come in right here, it's not in front of this building or in front of this building. There's actually access here that you pull in.
Right.
So you're not driving in front of any buildings essentially. Yeah. Is that clear? Is that answer your question? All developments other than single-family detached buildings shall have pedestrian walkways, a minimum width of 5 feet, connecting ground level parking. So this would be in the case of, you know, surface level parking, or if there was a garage, it would be the lower portion. To the public sidewalks and to all building entrances. So that's again priority to the pedestrian. You're giving them a clear path that other cars can see, essentially a crosswalk or something like that. Any questions on these? Okay. Driveway definition. You can read it. If you have any questions, let me know. And that last portion, a driveway is not considered a street because it's private. It's not.
Right.
And then pedestrian walkway, a walking surface similar to a sidewalk which facilitates the safe, unobscured, and convenient flow of pedestrians internally on a private property. So
Got it.
Bay Creek does this at the Coach House Tavern. They have that, like, they have, I believe, they have like a walkway or like
Yeah.
an identified space from
Yes.
the parking lot to
Yes,
there.
yes.
Yeah. So loading. So this is loading and unloading your items, your goods, things that you get shipped. So any loading activities within 150 feet of residential uses, that would be commercial, below residential, that would be included. So essentially, most of Mason Avenue would be included in this. Could only be permitted Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., and then on Saturdays from 9 to 9.
All right, but this whole provision is dealing with off-street loading. So if I pull up on Mason, that doesn't apply to
No.
Mason.
No, that's different.
Right, okay.
And we can't break, I mean, it's, yeah. We can take measures to alleviate what's already there because it's a historic town, it's just built that way. But, you know, like Pine Street, we talked about maybe a loading zone there and stuff, but this is specifically off-street. And of course, you know, it shouldn't hinder any movement of vehicles, pedestrians, etc. So I talked to Jeb, who's a property owner, or a business owner here, and I asked him the logistics of this time frame, and he said that that would totally be fine in his perspective.
I'm just thinking about it, about, you know, personal loading and offloading. You got carriers who deliver goods to residences. This fits very well within that, too. Yeah. Except possibly in those areas where on-street parking is not allowed, and then they're only there for the length of time they need to do the delivery. So there's not much you can do about it.
Yeah. But this would again be new construction too, so
Yep.
we'd accommodate for that.
Yeah.
Access, so it would actually be an asphalt or concrete surface, so again, with the paving, not a gravel drive. This is again, this is commercial, so essentially what I'm proposing to you guys to propose to town council for ultimate adoption is every new commercial development would have either pervious pavers, so, but it's not gravel, not shell, it's not anything like that.
So the example I talked to Zach on was Dead Rise, it's not a new establishment, it's there, but the golf cart path right next to it is all shell, and their delivery truck backs right up into it. So going into the future, if that was all brand new, those shells would not be allowed.
Right.
Could he,
But it could be pervious, right?
Yeah, it could be pervious pavers. I think that might be more expensive than asphalt and concrete though. But
but
it's
you'd
better.
have to have a certain portion of the property be pervious, wouldn't he? In some way,
Yes.
that little golf cart place?
Yeah, so in that situation, that little golf cart place would, if it was coming forward today, it would be either a variance or it'd have to figure something out to provide
They haven't been there
of
that
open
long.
space.
Good.
Well, yeah, well, yeah.
It's only been there 2
Do
years.
you need to put pervious in anything?
You get a sign.
Like a pervious-
You got a sign out.
Or like a,
Yeah, you're
pervious
specifying,
pavers.
yeah, you're specifying asphalt.
Yep.
Yeah, asphalt, concrete, or pervious pavers.
Yep.
So if you say or pervious pavers, that specifically excludes shells, gravel?
Yeah, so pervious pavers are a specific thing.
Good.
Yeah, I think we've already discussed it in something, I remember, because I was looking at examples for pictures and stuff, and grasscrete or grass paved, so we've identified that. And so I'll do that again here. Loading structures and bays, so this is like actually part of your building, a truck is gonna pull up and unload directly in your building essentially. So this is all not visible from an adjoining residential district or any public right of way, so you wouldn't have, it's obviously more convenient for a large truck to just back up in your, you know, instead of pulling around or something like that, but we would require these in the rear.
Got it, okay, yes.
So that way it's not just, you know, loading activities being done right as you're walking down the street, you can see it. Yeah.
When there's an alley.
I can't ever imagine this having,
Yeah, I don't think so either. Nothing to the extent of what we're gonna
unless
see.
it's over in an light industrial or,
Exactly, which, yeah,
it could happen over there at the Oxford.
definitely. These are just the dimensions, 12 feet by 35 feet deep. Clearance of at least 14 feet so that, you know, trucks not hit anything. Yeah, so have access from an alley and.
So the question I have for the last one, on the alley, are we imposing anything as far as what the surface area of an alley, if a new alley was to be built?
We don't have anything on that. We could, I mean, that would be something, yeah, that's a good, we don't have anything on that, no.
I notice a possibility of a conflict, number 5. No, if there is no alley from the street, your off-street loading shall have access to. So if the off-street loading is required not to be visible from the street, that constrains the developers to where he can put the off-street loading. You can't put, in other words, if he's got a building here, he can't put loading over here and then path the street, because it'll be visible from the street. It's gotta be behind the building or on the side or something, somewhere where it can't be visible.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're clear.
Yeah, of course, we would want, alleys are good.
Yep, absolutely.
Because that's
Where you can have them, yes,
Yeah.
right.
like if anyone.
Emergency access, waste removal,
Yeah.
all those kinds of things.
Utilities.
Yep, yep, right.
Savannah's plan is great, if y'all can see that, they have so many alleys, and it's just beautiful. So it'd be nice to somehow make that requirement, but right now there isn't one. This is just loading space requirements per square footage. I mean, we're probably never gonna see a 400,000 square foot. Well, you never know with an industrial area, like you never know what's gonna come, but it's always gonna be prepared.
Maybe Amazon took her.
Never know. So this is just, you know, under basically 49,000, you just have one loading space, etc. Dumpsters is the last one, other than definition. Oh, we've already done definitions. So dumpsters, a solid fence on 3 sides. So it's not just a dumpster. I didn't actually provide a picture, but Patrick Hand's building, there's a dumpster sitting on that corner, clearly visible from the right of way, not enclosed whatsoever. The shanty, I was actually talking to the New Bay Creek owner, and he was like, I don't want to provide the golf cart path there because it's right next to these dumpsters, you know, in the front of the building. So putting in the rear for new construction, and enclosed, in accordance to section 4.2G.
Like McDonald's has now.
Yeah, I was really pumped about that. I was
Yep.
like, yes, they're finally enclosing it.
Yep, right.
So, visible material defense shall be made up of brick, stucco, or stone. So it's not a wooden fence.
Interesting, yes.
It is, but think about a wooden fence compared to a brick enclosure. For a new development, remember this is a new development, so the cost to provide that compared to what they're gonna be making for anything that they're building in Cape Charles. I'm just saying, I understand I understand that you could have some,
Is there something about a gate here coming up?
Yes.
Okay.
Operable size should be concealed with a gate equal to or higher than the height of the dumpster.
So is that the fourth side or one of the three
Yeah,
sides?
the fourth side.
Okay.
Opaque and constructed of durable materials, so it's not just like, you know, some thing that someone puts up just to cover it, pallets or something. Dumpsters shall be placed in the rear and shall be located a minimum of 5 feet from the property line. Again, can't hinder pedestrian or vehicular traffic. So when they're providing a site plan to me, I'm going to be looking at that to make sure that it's not hindering a parking space or anything like that. Again, 150 feet of residential, it's the same requirement as before, time frame wise. And then temporary construction, trash cans, things like that can be up to the certificate of occupancy, so they'll have to remove those things.
You know, are we sure we don't want to also give it a time frame? Just because if you have a building permit and you're working on it, that can go on for a long time.
But typically, I mean, yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. But most people who are serious about constructing whatever they're constructing, they're going to want to get it done as soon as possible.
Because there's a
time
resources
is
they're paying
money.
for.
Yeah.
Well, I understand. So you're thinking it wouldn't be a good idea to put until such time as the certificate of occupancy is issued, but in no case longer than,
180 days.
or even if you said a
That's a
year.
good thought, I guess if someone just abandons it or something.
Yeah, right. Then you've got,
Well, what's a good
you have to
time?
have some meat to use to
Yeah, for
enforce.
sure, I like that.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
And that gives them plenty of time to go through their process too. We're not expecting them to, you know, bare ground to full up in 60 days. It's just ain't gonna happen here.
Yeah.
So are you thinking 180?
Yeah,
Yeah.
as a
Or
start.
maybe for what?
How long they can have that dumpster on site before it becomes an issue?
Well, I
Because
mean,
that's what this is for, right?
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, 180 what?
Days.
So you think somebody can build something in 180 days?
See, that's the thing is, it depends on what type of
Okay, I'm
building.
thinking residences now.
No,
Yeah, yeah.
This
This
is,
is
yeah.
commercial.
Okay, so what's more reasonable?
Well, that's why it's certificate of occupancy. I mean, when that certificate of occupancy, then that dumpster better be out there.
But that
Yeah,
is
yeah,
what, I mean, isn't that what you just said, Zach? What if they stop building? What if they walk out and it sits there? Then there's not gonna be a certificate
But,
of occupancy.
well, another thing about that though is they're renting that, if it's a large dumpster, they're renting it, so they're
Right.
still gonna be paying on that, they're probably gonna get rid of it as soon as possible if they abandon it.
Right.
Yeah. And to put a time limit, so certificate of occupancy, when someone comes in for the request for the certificate of occupancy, obviously a building goes out and he looks at everything and approves, and I'm gonna go out and look at the site and everything like that and approve it. And one of the requirements is if they don't have the dumpster, it's not done, you know, like that's part of your certificate, that's part of your development. So essentially, it's really just saying, it's allowing for temporary trash cans and things like that.
Right.
Mhm.
But to Diane's point, how do we, okay, how do we protect not only ourselves, but also the surrounding residences / businesses from somebody just abandoning a site? Unless we put in some arbitrarily time limit, or some other wording that effectively does the same thing.
Yeah, because I guess if you're gonna abandon a building, who cares if you abandon a dumpster?
I mean, I don't know what we could do for someone who's abandoned a building, I mean, hopefully that wouldn't happen.
We can't do one already.
You
Well, I mean, I would
know,
assume that the dumpster would have somebody's name on it,
Oh,
the
yeah.
owner of it, so you just call them and say,
Yeah,
hey,
that's
it's your dumpster.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think in that situation, we wouldn't be worrying about the dumpster, we'd be worrying about,
The
Building.
yeah, all the trash and stuff.
Very good, okay.
And then shall be provided via a paved dust-free surface, so it's typically gonna be something part of your interior drive, kind of area. That's it.
Well, be careful, the dumpster on Randolph, the 400 block, is sitting in the backyard, and it's not paved. So I'm not sure paved is an appropriate term. Dust-free maybe, but
Oh, well,
it's
that's,
a construction site, I'm gonna bring
This
it.
is commercial.
yeah, no, then this
Right.
is not for temporary, this is for defined.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is
Temporary
confusing
is
having
fine.
temporary above the 6 above 7.
So,
So, yeah, I can
maybe
switch
maybe I
out
just want to order
Six
the
and
order.
seven,
Yeah,
that's,
yeah, yeah.
that's it.
That's good.
Great.
I'm telling you guys, I'm really thankful for y'all's time. I know it's really, but it's just, it's huge.
Yeah,
Like,
because
we're-
it makes life easier for everybody who's got to do administration.
Yeah. I'm gonna provide a PowerPoint presentation at the, I think it's the 21st Town Council meeting, just an overview of what we discussed and all this. And I was thinking about like, okay, I was thinking about providing like, when this ordinance was written, you know, like, the iPhone didn't exist, or things like that. You know, just to show them,
Yes,
this is
right.
how society has progressed.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's not broken, but it could be better.
Yes, right.
That's it.
All right. Good. So, moving right along. New business. Appointment of a planning commissioner. A planning commission representative to the Historic District Review Board. So, Diane D'Amico has resigned.
Are you really asking me? I'll answer, but only if you really are asking me.
Is it that bad?
Yeah, it is.
That's sad. You might want to.
Is anybody interested?
I do think you have to have a planning commission on it.
All right, it's not a requirement.
No, it's not a requirement.
No, it's not.
I don't think I can, I'm already on Zoom.
He's already resigned.
If you put me on there, I'll quit. Be very clear.
You'll quit?
I have no tolerance for drama.
And you know, your wife is on it.
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
She could told you, I mean.
She'll leave it.
Sandra was on it.
Yeah, she'll.
Well, I would certainly offer it to her, the letter of decline. And not assume, unless
I
you've
mean,
already talked.
there was a lot of drama then.
Yes, but there's been change of personnel on it too.
And I
We
just
could-
quit. So I'm pretty sure that doesn't speak to things getting better. But regardless, maybe she'll do it.
Time.
You want to put
That is,
this off until next month?
Yeah, we could put this off until next month and see, wait and see for Sandra to come and see if she wants it.
I'm not interested, but the time.
I know, it's a time thing, I mean, you gotta, you know. it's- Okay, we're gonna put this off until next month when Sandra's here. And then, this way you can get all the feedback from,
Yeah. Yeah.
from your wife. So you can be, well versed. All right, okay. But there is not a requirement to have a commissioner, but.
But I think it would be, then there's long-term best
It
interest.
is
Yeah,
a recommendation
absolutely,
that we
yes.
have.
Yep,
And
yep,
so,
absolutely.
okay,
All right.
We just need somebody who's, because of high tolerance for drama.
You prohibit it because of the zoning, is that what you're saying?
I didn't think
He's
a person can be on 3 different
Yeah.
organizations.
Board of Zoning Appeals, yeah, you cannot.
Well, yeah, you can, because, but I don't think with the board and zoning appeals, you can't. But Sandra was on 3 different organizations at one time. Yeah. She was on HARB, Historic District Review Board and the Planning Board.
Okay.
All right, okay. Moving right along, 7B, election of chair and vice chair. All right. Any nominations?
Vice chair.
Sam?
Bill Strand for chair.
Current chair has been doing a pretty decent job. I'd say he's willing to continue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Leave
I
Sanders
have
vice
no
chair.
problems. So it's up to you all. Sanders is vice chair. Somebody else wants to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that Bill Strand is re-elected as chair.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Vice chair, Sanders, current vice chair.
Do you know if she's willing to continue?
I don't know. I'm sure she wouldn't propose not being the chair, but I mean, that's my conjecture, but.
Can we postpone that element to the next meeting then with her?
Yeah.
Yeah, give her a chance to get
I wish I knew what happened. I saw her this morning and she said she's here, so she,
Must have something.
as of this morning, something must have come up.
Okay. Okay, so make a note of that, that we'll do that at the next
Okay.
December.
Hopefully she's here.
Hopefully.
I'll be out of town, but I'll try to email pertinent information
Good.
to Tracy.
Okay. Okay, other business, any other business? Any announcements? Bay Creek, everybody didn't know, everybody knows that Bay Creek's sold, right?
I heard yesterday.
And who is the actual owner? Is it a company?
Yeah, it's called Preserve Communities.
Right.
Huh?
Preserve Communities.
Oh, I like the name.
Yeah.
And they, so you can look them up online, and then they are I guess a subsidiary, if you will, of, a big firm.
Somebody with deep pockets.
Yeah.
Good.
It's, just a second.
Hope it's not Brown Road.
Guy's name is,
I dealt with them in Turkey
Yeah,
back in
exactly.
1990.
Ooh.
Sorry?
I have dealt with them, L. Brown and Root in Turkey in 1990. Big contractor over there.
okay, I'm almost there.
It's like working Jones' phone. Quick through.
Bless you.
Inland Capital.
What is it?
Inland Capital, INLAND Capital.
Okay.
But they own a lot of big resort properties all over the world. They own Reunion Resort down in Orlando. That's one of their big ones. They own a lot of, and some big golf places too. So they own all the Cliffs communities. If you've heard of the Cliffs, big golf communities in South Carolina, North Carolina, up in the mountains. So,
Do they have a plan?
supposedly,
Is public?
well, from basically, it's if you go on the Preserve Communities website, under their news thing, they have the same thing that they send on the owners and members. Supposedly, they're going to change. They're going to, effective the 19th of this month, the back nine of Nicholas Golf Course will close.
I know, isn't that strange?
And they're supposed to immediately put in the True Beach Club
Whoa.
on the beach, and it would be what it was meant to be, which is a entertainment restaurant thing, and then the beach club would be a wellness fitness thing, and they're going to repurpose and redo the Coach House Tavern. My understanding is that they're going to expand the kitchen and the dining by using part of the cart barn there and that area, because they don't need all the cart barns, because now they don't have an extra 9 holes. So,
So how do you do that? You have an 18-hole golf course and a 9-hole?
well, you have 27 holes, so a lot of places have 27 holes, and so there's ways that you can play. You know, you have two nines, and then that are your primary for the day, and then the other 9 is for those who want to play 9, and then you switch them out the next day, and you rotate them on a
I
rotating
wonder how
basis.
that's gonna affect tournament play there.
It's going to have an effect on
I
tournament
would think
play.
so.
Does that,
But they quoted the reason was, and I will tell you that the golf course has been losing money since they both opened.
Yeah.
At least $1 million a year. So they don't have to play, therefore it hasn't been maintained properly.
Yeah.
So now they're saying that will allow them to maintain the golf courses and put added emphasis in those 27 holes and stuff, you know, like they've almost lost 2 holes here
Yeah.
from beach erosion. So they've got to get on that too, so.
and I talked to Ron Harris last week, he's one of the management at Chesapeake Bay Communications. He and his team are going to be there for another 4 to 6 months to keep things running and to aid the transition over to Charter/Spectrum. Yeah.
So, but if you read all their stuff, it basically they build communities. So they did supposedly purchase all the lots that were owned by Foster.
Okay.
So we shall see.
Yep.
Where there'll be retail?
I don't know. There's supposed to be a little retail area down. It's said in the thing down in Bayside Village, but we'll see. We'll see.
They'll know it works.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Time will tell.
Surprised all the titles were clear as hell.
Say again?
I'm surprised all the titles were clear as hell.
Well, there was a thing in the last paper, it said, the new corporation, it's called Bay Creek Development LLC, and they bought $1.5 million worth of lots, and it said, lots in Heron Point and on the Palmer course. And somebody asked me, well, what did they do? They buy the Palmer course? And I said, no, I think that's lots that are near on the Palmer course. All right, any other announcements? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
All right,